it's not something I'd expect. And so there's always been this sort of sense of surprise, right? In my case, a sense of accident. Lots of things are just accident. Anyway, I left that job for a few years, and I wasn't motivated by money. And it was an interesting thing to discover that this guy who started off very poor in life actually wasn't motivated by money, but by curiosity. I'm deeply curious about pretty much everything. A journalist asked me yesterday, you look really troubled, are you alright? A journalist asked me yesterday, what makes you tick? Because he asked me this is the second time he met me, because we had a half-hour interview the previous day, and he said, I wanted to find out what made you tick. And I said, after talking to you for half an hour, I still couldn't tell. And I said to him, it's really very simple. What makes me tick is curiosity. One word answers are nice for BuzzFeed kind of articles, right? They're not really true. I mean, it's nonsense that you could distill everything to. Even the question is kind of false in the premise, right? What makes you tick? As if there is a thing capable of making me tick. But if you were to ask, what is it that seems to drive you? What keeps your mind awake? It's curiosity. I'm curious about everything. Everything that comes into my field of vision. I will tell you something. Don't be, I may be wrong about this, but you might want to consider it. Don't let yourself be distracted by material things, right? By makeup. Orange theory is great. Orange theory is great, but not in practice. All things in moderation. But at this stage, you want to cultivate your appetite for ideas. Because it's the ideas that will shape how you encounter the world. It's the ideas that will help you through difficult times. I've had difficult times. It's not the stuff I have, it's not, The other thing is, be careful about peer pressure. If you feel you are under peer pressure, your peers are the wrong peers. Your peers should not be pressuring you, but they should be nurturing you. Find the right friends. It's really important. Don't assume that you have the right friends. So I want you to turn to the person to your right and look at them suspiciously now. All right. So so what did I do? Yes. After investment banking, I practiced as a barrister in England. I trained as a UK lawyer to practice at the English bar. I won top scholarship at the bar. I've been very good at winning scholarships. I'm very mercenary. You should approach scholarships in a very mercenary way. They're not given to the best person, right? They're given to the person who figures out what the scholarship committee wants to hear, and then adapts, no lying, never lies, and then adapts their message in such a way as to give that person, the committee, what they want to hear. This is how it's done. It sounds mercenary. It is. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's mercenary. But the guys who are getting, and when I say guys, I mean it in the American sense, right? Okay? The guys who get it, which means that there's no gender, the guys who get it are the ones who understand that over and over again. You have to be systematic. You read what they want, you you take seriously what they say they want to see. That's very important. A lot of thought goes into it. So I did that. I practiced law, and then I moved to Bangladesh for a period just under a year, from late 2001 to 2002. Did you all really want to hear the story of my tedious life? Okay, good. Fine. Well, late 2001 to some point, yeah, please.
Could you just tell us why you decided to switch from investment banking to law?
Oh yeah, investment banking, because after 6 months I wasn't really learning anything new.
6 months?
Yeah, after 6 months, so I carried on for a few years. But because it took a while to realize that I wasn't learning anything anymore. And then afterwards you realize, I stopped learning at that point. And you sort of hope that you're going to learn more, but there's... and I didn't have the money sort of appetite. You know, a lot of people do. It is a very boring job for many people. For some people it isn't, and for many it isn't. But for many it is boring, and that's why it's paid well. I was never in it long enough to make fabulous millions. Everybody thinks I must be some, wealthy investment banker. And my publicist, it irritates me no end that my publicist decided to bill me as a former investment banker. I think it's just marketing, somehow, glamorous or something. Really? Me? Yeah, I'm really not, honestly. So why did I switch? I also wasn't afraid. You see, it goes back to this business. All I wanted was not to be hungry. So I wasn't afraid of not being able to get a job, or because I was never afraid that I wouldn't be able to get a job that met my goal, which is not to be hungry. So it's very liberating. Do not be seduced by materialism. Don't. It's mad. There's even a lot of science now that proves this. There's a fantastic phrase. It's a phrase that describes how we cannot be satisfied by consumption. Psychologists call it the hedonic treadmill. You know what a treadmill is, right? Hedonism in the psychological sense is this business of feeding our appetites, our lusts. And you can do that. And you may think that you're going to advance. But in fact, all you're doing is walking to stand still. When you buy something, I don't know why I'm talking about, this is my pet topic, these things are my, allow me to, when you buy a sofa, which you will do one day, or a chair, you'll buy stuff like that because you want to deck out your nice house, get nice wallpaper.
Assumptions.
Yeah. Everybody, oh God, or a TV, a nice car. Next time you do that, make a note of the date you bought that thing. Make a note of how you felt about that. Then, 2 weeks later, reflect on how you feel that object. We don't care, it's amazing. You spent 6 hours deciding on a refrigerator. Within a week, you don't look twice at the refrigerator. Absolutely don't. It's madness. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. But what's in your head, the ideas that animate your life, the things that you wake up with in your head, those are the things that enrich your life, right? Because those are the things that you take into your encounter with the stuff you buy. With the stuff, with the world, I want to say, but that includes the stuff you buy. That's what determines your relationship with the external world and your relationship with others. Good. I go on about that a lot, but it seems to me that so many of us in education, I'm not a teacher, so much of education is about making consumers of us, right? And we want to be careful that we don't get caught in that trap. What did I do after so I worked in Bangladesh at Transparency International. Bangladesh was my title was director and head of research, and I worked under a chap called Barrister Manzoor Hassan, who was the head then, but he moved afterwards to BRAC and now heads a department at BRAC University. And I was fighting corruption. That's what Transparency International Bangladesh does. And I did that for a little under a year, and for various reasons. It was a complicated story, a personal story. I mean, I don't mean private, I mean personal. I left and I went back to the UK, it was then, and I was a corporate lawyer. And I did that for quite a few years, and then I left that again and became an international human rights lawyer. This time working out of New York for a group of lawyers funded by George Soros. And my job was to sue multinationals for corruption in the extractive industries in Africa, so mining companies of one kind or another, and government officials, presidents, and so on and so forth. And then in 2000, I really am going on and on. In late 2007, I quit that job and I went traveling. I gave myself a few years to travel across Europe and Asia. And then when I reached Syria, I got a call from an old friend saying that her mother was dying. I was very close to the family. I got on the next plane, came back to the UK. Her mother died 2 weeks later. And I was about to resume my journey, go back to Syria, when another friend called from New York saying, "We're about to have a baby. And where can I get this cradle, this godiyo?" He sent me an attachment, an image of a godiyo, a traditional Indian cradle. I think it's called a gadi here, I'm not sure. And it's mischievous because I make stuff, I renovate houses, and I've done that over the years. And I make stuff with wood. So I got out of storage. All my stuff was in storage. In fact, all my stuff still is, astonishingly. I got my first hardwood desk out of storage and I turned that into a godiyo. I carried it over to New York and I assembled it there. And the child was born. I was at the house. I stayed with them for 3 weeks. I came back to the UK, and 2 days later, I came back to the UK. A few days later, I got a call from my friend saying that the child was in hospital, on life support. I got the next plane back there. 2 days later, Barack Obama was elected president, and the baby was taken off life support. And I stayed in New York with my friends to try to be a support. There's not much you can do to help a couple who've lost a child. So I had time. And it was in that time that I took one of my notebooks. I carry notebooks all the time. I took my notebook out, and there was an idea that had lodged itself in my brain while I was traveling, an idea for a story, and I started writing that story. And I wrote a chapter, and this is the very end of 2008. I wrote a chapter, someone saw it, and a few days later, at 6:30 in the morning, my phone started ringing, and I was being called by the person who is now my literary agent. So that's how it all started. And this is the book. Have you got the book? Oh, in your room, yeah. So, anyway. Oh, there you go. There's a copy. Yeah. It's a big book. Yeah.
The pirated copy.
No, it's a cover. Don't worry. Oh, well. Anyway, so I'm going to stop there. You can ask any questions you want. Hang on a second. There was some notes. Oh, dream job. Be careful about dream job. Someone talked about a dream job. Yeah. Here's the thing. How do you know that your dream job is right for you? I mean, you might want to think about that. How do you know it's your dream job? You haven't done the job. Anyway.
Okay. Thank you so so much. Questions? Oh, so many hands, I don't know who to choose.
Oh,
So hard.
really? Actually, there's some over here.
Yes.
I have. With the first one, I'm going to ask you is that you switched from one job to another, like continuously.
Yeah.
What were you looking for?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think my career is a very good. I don't think my career is a very good. But there's no career. I mean, it's not a career. It's it's someone walking on hot coals. So I don't think it's a very good example. But I'm sorry.
Why?
I wish I could give you an example of how to do things. I don't think there is, there's no formula. But to answer your question, I have been looking for things that, I can give you an example of something I was looking for, and I didn't realize I was looking for it. I've been looking for very many different things. One thing I was looking for was someone to admire, and I didn't realize I was doing that. And when I did understand that I was doing that, it was a little easier to settle down. I was very lucky. I had certain, lucky breaks. Intelligence was one of them. But I also was unlucky in other ways. That's what I mean by personal. In certain ways, I don't think I was very well equipped for life. And I think, we need to tend our, we need to nurture our family and protect that. And so there's only so much you can do about that. But if you can do something, try to nurture your family relationships. It makes a big difference.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
You talked about you wanted to get out of poverty, and
Yeah.
then in the end you were talking about how one should not be materialistic and materialistic. Can you kind of bridge the two, and how, because a lot of people who have made it out of hard situations want to be rich for the rest of their life and make sure that they have all that they can.
I think about that a lot. Why didn't I become, avaricious, and I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. I was I done Haider just now, and Haider brings together people. I'm not sure we should be recording this. I don't know. Haider brings together a lot of people in Dhaka to. It brings together the elites, right? I mean, let's face it. It brings together members of the elite, and so I was at a supper last night on a rooftop in Dhaka, and I started talking about this very point. I don't know how it arose, but I started talking about accident of birth and the sense of entitlement that the rich have. I'm not very diplomatic, and I'm very happy with that. I feel very comfortable in that. I feel very uncomfortable when I don't, when I hold back. And it was interesting. What was interesting to me was that there was no recognition in the eyes of the rich when I made the point that our talents aren't earned, that they're not chosen. There was utterly no recognition. And it's very difficult for someone who needs to believe that they have a right to their relative great wealth. It is very difficult for them to consider the possibility that there is an accident actually at the root of the inequality. It's extremely difficult. So I don't know why it is that I went one direction and other people go in another direction. I don't know. I don't think there is. All of these things are easily explicable. And that's one of the things that on a happier note. That's one of the things that my novel explores. The fact that not all questions have answers, and some of them may not be capable of yielding answers. That's what this novel is about. So yeah.
Read the question. Yeah. What was the last most memorable book you read?
Well, the last my book.
And you should read it too.
Yeah.
Available at Buckycore in Chittagong.
Yeah. No.
Nazifa?
I'll answer your question.
Oh.
No, but once I can remember.
Okay.
It's just that I never remember memorable books.
I thought that was your answer.
Yeah.
Nazifa?
In your talk, you mentioned that, when you talk about yourself, you say that you were talking positive, you were just like you had it.
Sorry?
So when you talked about yourself, you said that you have this talent, you were just like you have it.
Yeah.
And later on, when you talk about the rich, you say that they're not really, they don't really deserve what they have, in some sort of way, or they maybe justify
They don't
what
deserve
they
quite
have.
as much.
Yeah. So I just wanted to know what's your definition of this notion of deserve or who deserves what and
Well, it's a very good question. I'm not talking about. I'm talking about this subjective feeling that you deserve, this sense of entitlement. So I'm not talking. I'm not suggesting that there is because the context I'm talking about is one in which I don't need to define what. I don't need to give a specific definition of when someone objectively deserves something. All I need is an understanding of what someone who says, I deserve, specifically what a rich person means when they say, I deserve this. That's very different. You see, the former is the objective, the latter is the subjective of the rich person. So I don't really, and we all know what we're talking about without knowing what is meant, because we know the situation in which a rich person says, I deserve that. Right? Does that make sense? You might want to listen to the recording. It might not make sense even then. But yeah, any other questions? Sorry, I don't know how I feel I've just sort of taken our conversation off on one angle, but I'm distressed when I look at the internet and all the Justin Biebers and whatnot. What is the other one? Someone told me about Taylor Swift the other day. I said there's a very famous person called Taylor Swift, and I read the Wikipedia entry and I still didn't understand. And I think everybody, what's going on? Relax, just
Relax about what?
Consumption and the petty, I don't know, I'm an old-fashioned.
So,
Read books and get together and talk.
Which
and,
books? This book, really?
Start with the classics. Any book that's been published in the last 20 years, don't bother. I mean, there are lots of. I shouldn't. My publicist will hate this. I know. But it's the truth. I mean, why am I saying this on record? I can't believe this.
You already said we can't put this up on the internet, so that's
Don't put it on
fine.
the internet.
So
but
be
there are so
candid.
many great books. Read every classic. I mean, there's fantastic literature already out there to look at. And don't look for something you'll enjoy. Don't look for that. Look for something that is a great work of art or a classic. Get into the conversation. You might not like it, that's fine, but think about why somebody else did or why people think it's a great book, right? Because then you're speaking outside the silo of your own subjectivity. If you're always going for the thing you like, be it the car or if you're always going for the kind of book you like, if you respond to Goodreads recommendations, the algorithms behind Goodreads that look at what you've liked before, and it turns out 100 people like exactly the same profile of likes as yours, but they actually read one other book which you haven't read, so Goodreads says, you should read this book as well, right? You're going to like it, right? But you're going to drive yourself into this silo of the things you like. And literature is much more than that. It's a way of going outside your subjectivity, outside the boundaries of what your aesthetic, and trying to engage in a conversation across other people and time. So read, read Mikhail Bulgakov, Heart of a Dog, and then go and read Jane Austen, and then, there's so much. Read Philip Roth. Be angered by Roth's alleged sexism. But, yeah.
Ready for another question?
Yeah.
Like, I completely aspire to your idea that in the end ideas matter.
Yeah.
But at the same time, your perspective towards materialism. But when we also see, materials also represent ideas. Even that all is purely they represent ideas. A lot of thought has been put into it. Taking that, buying that, appreciating that idea, isn't that good there?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, there's a I think you're conflating two different things. Sometimes you use a finer language you use a finer language to draw the distinctions we require. When I'm talking about ideas, I'm talking about the ideas that matter. I'm talking about things like love and beauty, honor and sacrifice. But the phrases taken from the things, the phrase and acceptance, really important. So, it's a great speech, fantastic speech. Those sorts of things, ideas that have weight, right? I'm not talking about. There are. I'm not talking about aesthetics of that kind. It's not a. But I know what you'll make a fine French intellectual one day. Sorry. Yeah. Any other questions? Sorry, no. I'm don't worry. We're all friends.
I haven't read your book, and I don't know about the age of Stacy, but
I love that lady. Did you see that? No, nothing she said blamed herself. It's true thing. AW makes us late.
And interestingly, Masuma is known for being a conscientious, hardworking student. So that must have been a very ironic thing. Huh?
Sorry.
Were you able to express your anger through your poetry?
My anger. That's a great question. Was I able to express my anger? Yeah, I think so. I mean, novels are fantastic way. Do you know, I wrote this novel over. I wrote this novel over 4 years, and I used to. I first of all, as soon as I wrote a couple of chapters, and then I realized this is going to take a long time. So then I was worried that I was going to change over the course of writing it, and I wanted to keep the fundamental tone of the novel. I wanted, the moods would change, but I wanted a key to be stable throughout the novel. So I went through the novel and I found various scenes that I thought should reflect the fundamental tone, and I wrote those scenes. I had the whole story in my head. The second novel is the same. I got the whole story in my head, and because I just spent a lot of time just thinking about But then there were other scenes. Then I just start, and just wrote like that. But if my mood changed, if I had an angry day for whatever reason, or I was frustrated by something, I tried to find a scene that corresponded to my mood, and I'd write that scene. Because it's very hard to write, I don't know, it's very hard to write a scene of adventure when you're